Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for checking out another episode of Kenny's Record Collection. Tonight's episode is going to be all about the Stooges, all their early releases, original pressings, later pressings. I'm going to show you how to figure out if you have a first pressing of the first album. So let's get it started. We're going to start with the record that kicked it off for the Stooges. Stooges' first album, self-titled, released in 1969. A lot of people consider this to be the first punk album. It's not punk. I guess it could be considered proto-punk. Amazing track listing. Every song on it is just banging. 1969, I Want to Be Your Dog, We Will Fall, which is, it's a little crazy, that song. No Fun, Real Cool Time, and Not Right, Little Doll. The whole album is just insane. Love it. So you got Iggy Pop, James Osterberg is his real name. Then you got the Asheton brothers, Ron and Scott, and the bass player, Dave Alexander. This is a first pressing of the first album. Of course, no barcode, no nothing like that. You got the original catalog number, EKS-74051. Okay, this is the inner that it comes with. It's a little bit of glossy paper feel. And this is the record. You may notice something a little different about the label itself. It's your classic late 60s Elektra label. But the interesting part about it, there's no band name on the label. For some reason, when they put out that record originally, they did not put the Stooges name on the label. So that's the biggest indicator that you have a first pressing. There are other first pressings that say the Stooges on the label, but a lot of people consider this to be like the ultimate first pressing. I think like certain pressing plants in the United States did use the labels with Stooges written on it. I'm not sure which ones, but I'm sure you could find it if you really look. You could figure out. And also, I think the Canadian version says Stooges on it. But yeah, that's like a holy grail for me right there. This is a recent reissue. This is the John Cale mix. John Cale, you know, from the Velvet Underground. He produced the Stooges album. His mix was really rough, and at the time, it was too mind-blowing. Elektra did not want to release it like that. It's a lot more raw than even the version that we all know today. If you really listen with a close ear, you could hear just a lot of like little mistakes and stuff like that. And on the real release that came out in '69, they tried to kind of cover up a lot of that. But this is just the real raw, you know, it's really good. And this was put out by Music on Vinyl. It's a subscription service, but I don't subscribe to it. If they ever put out something that I really like, I just find it on eBay. They're usually below cost because everybody thinks they can put them up there and flip them. They join the club just to try and make money. The inside of the sleeve has a nice, it's like a colored inside. They seem to really go all out. I think they call this a tip-on jacket. You can kind of see like the seams where the artwork's folded over. I mean, the inner is great. That photo is really sick. And the other side is really cool. The vinyl itself, I hope you can kind of see the color, but it's like a reddish, like blackish red mix. It's really sick. I'm looking through it into the light right now. It's nice. And like I said, it's really raw. Let me just slip this back in. The music on vinyls also come with this. It's kind of like an Obi, but it's their own little thing with the explanation of the album. And then in here, it has a recipe for an adult beverage. They try to match, you know, the band's style with a cocktail. This one's called Stooges in 1969. It's like a Scotch drink. I mean, it's cool, I guess. All right, moving along. All right, the Stooges' second album, released in 1970, I believe. Funhouse. I've always loved the artwork on this record. It's just like kind of a psychedelic style. I mean, at the time, they didn't know what they were. You know, they were just the Stooges. Some people thought of them as kind of psychedelic. Like, I think when they first started playing shows, they were called the Psychedelic Stooges. But they were just out there doing their own thing. The gatefold, I love. I love this photo. It's really cool. Another amazing album. Every track on it. Down on the Street, which I originally heard as a teenager. Rage Against the Machine covered it. I had never heard the Stooges at that time. I was pretty, you know, pretty green. Stooges, it was hard to come by even at that time. They weren't like the critically acclaimed band that, you know, everybody talks about right now. You know, when I was a teenager, you knew who Iggy Pop was, but Stooges weren't really as accessible. Loose, TVI, Dirt, 1970, Funhouse, LA Blues. Just the whole record is great. Heavy duty sleeve. You know, it's a nice thick sleeve. You know, what else can I say? It's cool. You know. The record itself, it's that classic early 70s Butterfly. This is a first pressing. There's also versions, I believe, on a gold label. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe a different... Elektra changed labels so much at that point. They had like 3 different labels within 2 years. So some of the stuff, it's hard to figure out exactly what's going on. This was the inner. It's like a papery Elektra inner sleeve. And at the bottom, I don't know if you could see it, it says Elektra Records and None Such Records. I guess there was a merger, or None Such was an offshoot. I'm not sure. Also, too, interesting about the Stooges, they got signed at the same time as the MC5. Danny Fields, who people know from being working with the Ramones. The song Danny Says is about him. But yeah, in 1968, he went to Michigan and he saw the Stooges and the MC5, and he had them signed to Elektra. And I think the Stooges, they signed the deal for like $5,000. And the MC5, they got like $20,000. Which still, I mean, those bands, to think how iconic they are now, they never made any money. All right, so things weren't going too well for the Stooges. They were a mess. Half of them were addicted to drugs, heroin, namely. Wasn't a good scene. A lot of their shows were they were all over the place. And the bass player, Dave Alexander, was messing up. So he got kicked out of the band. I believe they found a replacement for him. I can't remember the guy's name. But they went on kind of limping through the country. They did a tour, and, they exploded. So they broke up, and there was a little bit of a lull, So Iggy Pop happened to be in New York City one night at Max's Kansas City. He runs into none other than David Bowie. They start talking, they hit it off immediately, and Bowie tries to set him up with a deal with Columbia. So he decides to call up his old band members, and since they were out a bass player, what they did, they got James Williamson to play guitar for them, and I guess they demoted Ron Asheton to bass. I mean, I'm a bass player. I wouldn't say playing bass is a demotion, but you go from being the lead guitarist in the band to the bass player all of a sudden, and then this flashy young kid, James Williamson, comes in the band, and they record Raw Power, and it's like nothing anybody's ever heard. This is the album right here. Awesome photography by Mick Rock. This is the back cover. And what do you see there? It says Iggy and the Stooges. So they're not the Stooges anymore. They're Iggy and the Stooges. And if you check the back pictures, what do you see? There's like 5 pictures of Iggy, and the rest of the band is pretty much left out. You see, I think that's Ron Asheton in the background holding a guitar, but meanwhile he played bass on this record. Every song on this is just killer. Search and Destroy, Gimme Danger, Your Pretty Face Is Going to Hell, Penetration, Raw Power, I Need Somebody, Shake Appeal, Death Trip. The whole thing is just, if you don't know the Stooges, this is definitely a great place to start. This is what I started with. When they re-released Raw Power in like the late 90s, Iggy Pop did his own mix of the album. This is the David Bowie mix on here, which a lot of people said wasn't done too well, so Iggy turned around and redid it. You could hear some similarities and also some dissimilarities, especially on the song Gimme Danger. There's like a piano riff that you really can't hear on this version. On the Iggy Pop version, the one that came out in the 90s, you can hear it. This is the inner that it came with, which is really cool. I'm holding it up to the light right now, and it's an awesome effect. You can't see it from my perspective, but it's the same thing on both sides, but when you're looking at it through the paper, you see the image of Iggy twice. So his face is here and his face is there, and it's kind of cool. It's almost like a Rorschach of Iggy. Pretty sick. Never noticed that before. And this is the record. Columbia label, 70s Columbia. I have the 76 or 77 reissue. When the punk thing was happening in 77, a lot of them were crediting Iggy and the Stooges as an influence, and I guess Columbia decided to re-release the record. It's basically the same, but up in that top corner where it says Columbia, it's in white instead of red. The original pressing is in red, the square, so that's how you're gonna know if you're holding a original pressing. And I mean, the record itself looks very similar. There's really nothing special about it. This copy's beat up, but it got me through for a while until I decided to jump on an original pressing. The original pressings aren't crazy expensive, but they're a few bucks. This is like a 2010 reissue. And it's cool because they included they remade the original hype sticker from the Raw Power album. And if you notice there too, it doesn't say Stooges, it just says Iggy. So, I mean, if I was playing in the band with them, I would really feel like it turned into the Iggy show instead of about the Stooges, you know? So they didn't last too long after this record was made. You know, they didn't realize the impact it was going to have, you know, 20, 30 years later. But, you know, who knew? I'm coming down to the end right now. I just wanted to show this record just as a suggestion. This is Post-Stooges, but it's, in my, like, mind, I feel like it's like an offshoot of the Stooges. You know, it's kind of like where they could have went if they stayed together. James Williamson's playing guitar, and it's a bunch of other musicians that I'm not 100% sure who they are, but the record is just great. Every song on this is awesome. It's just a combination of like rock, like just weird gutter blues type. It's hard to explain, but you might dig it. It's on Bomp Records. It was mainly released on green vinyl, which is cool, you know. Came out in like 76 or 77. This was right before Iggy was really working with Bowie, like as far as songwriting, like the Idiot album and the Lust for Life album, and he worked with Bowie too on some of that Berlin period that Bowie's famous for. So yeah, that's all from my Iggy and the Stooges records. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you out if you're trying to figure out what you have in your collection. I'm all about all the minutia of all these different records. I love it. So yeah, if you can, please subscribe to my channel. Check out some of my other videos. And have a good weekend. Thanks.